Welcome to MotoringFile News on YouTube. This is the first time we've tried this, and of course, if you know MotoringFile, we've been around for over 2 decades now, which is crazy. We've been doing podcasts for almost 20 years. In fact, I think 20 years, perhaps. I can't remember anymore. Nonetheless, MotoringFile is the largest news source, largest website for minis in the world. We have tons of videos, of course, on YouTube, but we've never really brought you news on YouTube in this way. And so I thought, hey, let's give it a shot. Kind of fun, and it's a topic that I think is a huge one for Mini, and it's one that deserves a little bit of explanation, and that is, of course, Mini's massive shift away from the EV Mini Cooper, the all-new J01 and the J05 Mini Aceman. When I say shift away, it's not that they're going to stop making them. That's not the case. But there had been a plan for the last 2 years to expand production of both those products from China into the UK and specifically into the Oxford plant. That plan has now been changed. And while there's no confirmation from Mini formally yet, we do know through several different sources that are very trustworthy that Mini has now shifted plans. Now, what they're going to do, we don't know. And I can give you our ideas, but let's first just get to what sources tell us. So the F66, of course, will remain in Oxford. F67 will remain in Oxford. Those are not going anywhere. The Countryman, it's going to be produced in Germany as it has been. So that part of the product line up is A, all new, and B, not going anywhere. What is shifting is the the J01, what is shifting is the J01 and the J05. So the J01 and J05 are based off of a shared platform with Great Wall Motors and a joint venture that BMW has set up with them called Spotlight Motors. That joint venture was signed off in 2018. It's interesting it's a joint venture because Chinese law changed around that time, allowing for Western companies to come in and simply plant roots in China. They didn't need to have a joint venture as they had previously been mandated by law. But nonetheless, it's a joint venture. And of course, in China, there is a massive EV growth that's been happening over the past 5-7 years. And in a lot of ways, when you want to see what the bleeding edge tech is in the EV world, you go to China. So BMW, logically looked at China to support some of this. They needed to help defray costs. When it comes to, of course, producing a vehicle, we're talking billions and billions of dollars. And these cars, while they sell in large numbers, they don't sell in massive numbers. And BMW doesn't have other small cars to sort of match up with this platform to sort of, help defray those costs across different models, different brands even, as they would with the Countryman and the X1, BMW X1 or X2, for instance. And so BMW's move, or Mini's move, I should say, was to create this joint venture. Of course, enormous amounts of tariffs later, things have changed dramatically. You can't sell these cars profitably in the United States, and quite frankly, in a lot of different markets. In Europe, in fact, there's now a tariff on them as well. And so what BMW decided to do, what Mini decided to do, was to shift or expand production into Oxford. That was the stated goal. The UK government had actually given money, or was going to give money to BMW to expand the plant to do so. While that expansion may still be happening, what's going to be produced there won't be the J01 and the J05. That is now confirmed through our sources. And so where does that leave us? Well, it's an interesting place. I think for one, if you think about the J05, the Aceman, and the J01 Cooper, you can't help but wonder if they're just going to kind of live out their lives as, Chinese made, and then ultimately, that joint venture, that partnership is sort of dissolved at the end of that generation, which is around 2030 or so. And so then what's in their place? I mean, Mini has a couple different options here. I think for one, they could, of course, sort of re-engineer those cars. And I think the key part here is re-engineer the supply chain. So it's a Europe-specific supply chain, allowing them to be produced in Oxford. And I think at the same time, and I think this is also a really important note, re-engineer them with a more modern approach to EVs. And I say modern because if you look at the Renault 5, for instance, it's a car that weighs 400 or 500 pounds less than the Mini Cooper, has 5 doors, I guess, versus the 3 the Cooper has, gets more range, and looks and feels more upmarket. And yet it's cheaper. And it's made in Europe. And so I think there is a lot to be said about the competition that's coming for MINI and what MINI needs to do to really, I think, get its edge back a bit in the EV space specifically. And I think what MINI, if I could read into this a little bit, what they probably look at this time as a moment to do that. And in a lot of ways, this sort of slowing of EV adoption in certain markets allows them a little bit more time to get there. It's an interesting point when you think about it, because we all know EVs are the future in so many markets. MINI has to move in that direction, no question. And so giving them a moment to actually kind of regroup and rethink on how you want to approach that, what kind of vehicles do we want to actually create, and how do we do so efficiently and effectively from a cost perspective, and of course nail it, make a great product. I haven't driven the J01. Based in America, MINI doesn't seem to want any of us to ever touch those cars. I would love to, or the J05 for that matter. Haven't had a chance. I've sat in them, seen them, of course, had a lot of experience being around them, but have just never driven one. So I can't speak to how they drive. I can't speak to if they live up to the MINI brand, if you will. But what I can speak to is the fact that there's really interesting competition out there that wasn't there maybe 18 months ago, much less 2 years ago. So that's where we're at with the J01, the J05, and a little new wrinkle is that the J03, which was going to be the convertible version of the J01, has also been canceled. Not surprisingly, in a way, because listen, MINI is regrouping here. Why produce yet another car through this joint venture that ultimately may not go anywhere? So it's an interesting time for MINI, and I think it's going to get even more interesting as we start to hear what's next. So the F66 and the F67, of course, the petrol-powered Cooper, 3-door and 5-door, have been out for a while. We don't know, from a sales perspective, it's hard to compare apples to apples right now, so we don't know really how they're doing. The Countryman is out there and has been out there for a while. Same thing. Some of the issues with recalls and just general availability of those cars have made it difficult to totally understand how sales are going. We hear things for sure, both good and bad. So, for instance, the F67, the new internal combustion convertible, has seen huge interest, according to sources. But at the same time, if you talk to very specific dealers, I've heard very, again, specific things around, hey, we had a really slow month here. This is not selling. That's not selling. It's tough to really understand what that means at scale. But nonetheless, we'll keep an eye on that for sure. So that is a quick explanation of what's been happening with MINI on the EV front. Of course, the Countryman EV will continue on. It's set for upgrades. There's a lot of news on that on MotoringFile. In fact, there's a lot of news on everything on MotoringFile. You'll definitely want to check that out. For more videos like this, definitely subscribe somewhere over here in the corner. Like this video, that always helps us, as you know. And click around. I mean, we've got a ton of videos out there to sort of get you pretty excited about the current products. New JCW review is live as of a couple weeks ago. So check that out for sure, and head over to motoringfile.com for a lot more news.